Greg is an assistant professor of psychiatry at the New Dell Medical School at the University of Texas at Austin. Greg received the One Mind Bozuki Brain Research Funding Rising Star Award, which is focused on bipolar disorder. Bipolar disorder is a syndrome about which we still know relatively little, which is relatively common, and which has not received nearly the investment that it warrants. Greg, thank you for joining us. Congratulations on the award, and please tell us about your Rising Star Award proposal.
Thank you, Eric. It's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you, Brandon, and I'm very excited to tell you a little bit about the research that's been generously funded by the One Mind Rising Star Award. Broadly speaking, my research is focused on developing new and effective neuroscience-based treatments for affective disorders, including bipolar, which are those mental disorders that are predominantly characterized by dysregulated mood and emotions. One way to do this is to try and directly target the brain regions that show abnormal functioning in these conditions. So common affective disorders like bipolar disorder, depression, anxiety, and even post-traumatic stress disorder are consistently characterized by elevated activity of neural structures located deep within the brain, which are involved in generating emotional responses. Now, the most important of these structures is called the amygdala. Now, the frontal lobes of the brain are responsible for regulating these deep brain emotional responses. So as an analogy, these deep brain structures, like the amygdala, are like the accelerator on the emotional car, while the frontal lobes are more like the brakes. Now, in states of dysregulated mood, this frontal control of deep brain structures involved in emotion is deficient. In other words, the brakes become worn out and don't work as they should, which basically doesn't allow the car to slow down because the accelerator is too sensitive when it's pushed. Typical psychiatric treatments, such as antidepressants, mood stabilizers, and psychotherapy, only indirectly target these brain structures, and they're not effective for a substantial number of individuals. This has led to the development of brain modulation as a treatment tool in psychiatry, in which electrical or magnetic forces are used to stimulate or inhibit specific sites in the brain in order to more directly augment brain function. However, these current methods are limited. They can only reach surface areas of the brain, for the most part, in other words, those that are close to the skull. Therefore, only the frontal lobes can have their function augmented by these technologies. So in terms of the car analogy, we can only improve the brakes with these tools, but we aren't able to reduce the oversensitivity of the accelerator pedal. However, a new and exciting area of development is the use of high-frequency sound waves, known as ultrasound, to modulate brain function. Ultrasound has key advantages over other brain modulation technologies. Most importantly, it can reach these deep brain structures like the amygdala. It can also be more easily combined with neuroimaging tools like functional magnetic resonance imaging, which can be used to observe brain function as it occurs, and which can allow us to verify firsthand that we are hitting the right target for the individual. Lastly, it can be delivered to a wider segment of the population, since it doesn't interfere with any electrical implants that might be present, like pacemakers or potentially metal in the skull. So the goal of my project that's going to be funded with this Rising Star Award is to use ultrasound waves to inhibit the function of the amygdala in individuals with bipolar and other affective disorders, which would be a brand new method of correcting this emotional imbalance in the brain. So instead of improving the brakes, we're going to try and use ultrasound to reduce the sensitivity of the accelerator pedal, to go back to our car analogy. And additionally, we're going to combine this ultrasound technique with neuroimaging. So that way we can look in near real time how the ultrasound waves might change the function of the brain target and how this might occur differently in those with an affective disorder. This will allow us to more effectively target the technology to where it needs to reach in the brain in order to have a therapeutic effect and to observe how the rest of the brain responds when the amygdala is turned down. So people that participate in the study will undergo this ultrasound procedure once a day for several weeks to examine whether this improves mental health symptoms. And the hope is that repeatedly desensitizing the accelerator pedal with this ultrasound will correct the imbalance in the brain that leads to mental health symptoms of mood dysregulation, like those seen in bipolar disorder, depression, and anxiety. And if we're successful, this could usher in a brand new treatment modality for psychiatry that's informed by brain circuits, directly targets a dysfunctional brain process, and can be more flexibly applied to a wider range of individuals. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to tell you a little bit about that.
Thanks, Greg. Let me follow up quickly with two quick questions to get some clarifying information. First, the amygdala. Can you show us on your head roughly where the amygdala is?
I could, but I wouldn't survive the procedure, unfortunately. It's basically it's located deep within the temporal lobe, which is the lobe on the side of the brain towards the center of the head.
How big is it in a human brain?
It's about probably 1 to 2 centimeters in diameter.
So maybe the size of a marble, perhaps, on the side of the brain?
Yeah, probably a little bit larger than that, but yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's about right.
And most of us, when we hear the word ultrasound, we think of going to the doctor and having an ultrasound test for our abdomen or heart or another organ. How are you using ultrasound for brain?
Yeah, it's a good question. So ultrasound has been classically used as a diagnostic tool in order to be able to look at what's going on, for example, in the brain or other parts of the body. In this case, we're using a multi-transducer array, which allows us to basically use multiple sources of sound waves that will converge on a specific focus. And the idea is that then we're depositing the ultrasound energy into a specific area that we're targeting.